Hi there, my name's Andy from Dagobbo's Grotto. Apologies for actually looking directly at the camera and not towards you guys. Today I'm going to do a video on how I make a generic dungeon stroke sewer modular tiles. It will be so we can use them for all types of games like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for Dungeons and Dragons. So I won't really give it an age. It won't be sort of a modern sewer, although these days most modern sewers are actually sort of really old ones anyway. I'm going to make them out of MDF as a board base and blue foam as the detail. I'm going to show you how I put them together, and in the series of videos how eventually it will become this modular board that will become a living dungeon. Right, so the medium we're going to use, I've said, is blue foam. Like I say, I'm not a terrain tutor, I'm just someone who's going to put together this thing. So if I say something that you think, oh, well, you know, that's obvious, then I'm sorry about that. I'm not trying to teach you to suck eggs, which seems to be my favourite saying when I'm doing these videos. I'm just going to try and put together some bits and pieces. The techniques I'm going to use, I've borrowed, stole, whatever you like to call it, inspired by other sites, so I'm not going to take any credit for any of these. For example, the brickwork and stuff like that is inspired by other people like Stephen Fletcher from Steve's Small World, Luke's APS, Luke Fellows from Luke's APS. So the blue foam we're going to use comes in great big sheets. You're just going to see a big blue screen. It's the XPS, I think it's called. Basically, it is underfloor heating that I bought off the internet for about £4 for a 2 foot by 4 foot piece. I just ordered the one because I wanted to see what it was like before ordering more. I will be ordering quite a bit more because I'm going to be using that not only to form the basis of the floor of the tiles but also the walls. So I'm just going to cut it down to a more manageable size and I'll get back to you. Right, so what we've done is I've cut the blue foam, which is 10mm thick blue foam, into 12-inch squares, into 12-inch tiles. The reason I'm going to use 12-inch tiles is because I'm going to make initially 9 12-inch tiles to make up a 3x3 board, and then expand that up to 16 tiles to make a 4x4 board, just to add some extra sort of modality about it. I've used imperial measurements just because that's what most of the game systems that I use are built into. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to make it a kind of almost like a hex board. So the board is going to have tiles within tiles. It's going to have be divided up into 1-inch squares. Now, there's obviously schools of thought to say that would allow people to pre-measure. That's okay. Most of the games don't care anyway. They don't really do competitive gaming or anything like that anyway. So it will give it a kind of neat feel to it. It will give it an easy board game feel to it if you want to do Dungeons and Dragons and break up their movement into different sort of square movements or that kind of game. And if you don't, you can just use your normal rulers and measure as normal. So it doesn't make any difference to have them on there or to not have them on there. So I'm going to break it into those 12-inch squares across. What I'm also going to do to add some strength to the board is I'm going to put an MDF board underneath. So I'm having some 10mm MDF made up into 12-inch squares, and this will just glue on the top of that. So this is the only detail part, and that's going to be the strength, and then we'll build some strength into the foam using paints and whatnot afterwards. So all it is now is just a kind of laying it out. The beauty of having blue foam is that you can draw the detail pretty much straight onto the board. And I do mean literally I should be using a ballpoint pen just to do it out. One of the other beauty things is that I can carve some detail straight into it. So if I want to draw some floor mosaic, I can. If I want to carve in some detail, that's what I'm going to do as well. Any kind of curbstones and stuff like that is going to be put into one of the hex marks, so it won't be an addition to, it will be in with the tile in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark it up using my rule, so that you see how it looks. And as you can see, it's 12 inches by 12 inches. I'm going to try and do this as neatly as I can. Neat isn't my forte, unfortunately, but I shall just divide it up into those marks. And these particular ones are going to be the generic tiles that are just kind of, I'm going to add walls to and whatnot. And the foam that I bought from the underfloor heating people was in millimetres rather than imperial measurements, so it was in metric measurements, and it's actually just under 4 foot by 2 foot, so it doesn't neatly divide up into the tiles, but that's okay as well, because one has a plan, and the plan is that all the I can get out a 12 by 12 tile, get 3 of those out with no problem at all. They will be my generic dungeon tiles, and the smaller version will be either narrow bits at the end, will either be walls or they'll be the sewer parts, and I'll show you how I'm going to do those sewer parts later. So all I'm doing here is just dividing up this into a simple grid using the ballpoint. Once I've done that, as you can see, you can just draw the detail straight into there. Now you could worry that it provides the material is too soft to be sturdy, but the strength is going to be built into it later. So we're going to use our painting materials to add some resilience into these. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grid that off and we'll come back. Right, so hopefully you can see the scribing that I've done. I've gridded out a few of them so far. I haven't finished it yet. The reason I haven't finished it yet is because I've decided on this particular piece to have a decorative centerpiece, just to make it a bit different. So I've kind of roughly sketched out a little symbol, and what I'll do is I'll just inscribe that so that you can see it kind of develop as I did. Very scientifically for my circle initially, because I liked everything to be encapsulated in a little circle, I just use a glass. I haven't got a set of compasses, so I just used a glass to draw out a circle, and I'm just going to use my ballpoint again just to rescore it and go around there. So once that's out, just dig in the biro a bit deeper to give you the bas relief even. I think it's bas, so it's the opposite, isn't it? And that's the circle done and done. Again, doesn't have to be neat, because it's going to be sort of an ancients and they didn't use that many neat techniques they do in modern. There's no laser cutting. So yeah, just nice centre circle. Doesn't really matter if it's a bit off centre, which it is. Doesn't bother me again. So I'm going to just go over the pencil marks that I made for my symbol. You'll see what it starts to form. I'm not going to use that specific catchphrase from a certain disgraced Australian cartoonist, but you should start to see it develop into a bit of a, well, I hope, an obvious sign, maybe a cult or something like that, operating deep in bowels of New York City if you're playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Pulp, or any of those other kind of games. So this is just a symbol I've taken off the internet. I don't worship this particular deity. So you just hopefully you can start to see it take a bit of shape. I did a rough pencil sketch, so I'm just going to follow those. You can tell what it is, I think. Oh, I very nearly did it with the accent as well. I need to gotch myself, otherwise I'm going to get banned off YouTube. I'll head straight for a libel case. But you should start to see some detail forming. I'm going to cut my way into it. Let's get some more tentacle goodness sorted. Not too deep. Really just to let the paint run in and give it some definition. So nearly there. I would just skip forward on the video, but I'm quite enjoying the fact that you're going to kind of see if it develop. There we go. And last one. You can kind of see our hero rushing to rescue a hostage who's been kidnapped by an evil cult intent on sacrificing them in some unknown and ungodly dark ritual. So it's a bit upside down. Hopefully you can see that. Ooh, don't know where that camera is. There it is. Just inscribe that along with the grid, and then I'm just going to finish off the grid around it. I'm purposely going to leave that as one tile rather than make that into lots of different tiles, although you can do that as well. So I'll just finish off the grid and come back. Right, so now it's completely gridded off. It actually looks quite good as it is, but we're going to want to make it a little bit more ruined. So it's just a case of personal preference now. Do you want to keep all the tiles pristine? A lot of the time I'm a bit like that. I like my terrain to be a bit pristine, which isn't always realistic because sometimes it needs to be weathered, and in this particular case I think it needs to. So all you can do is just take your ballpoint and randomly draw in some cracks and missing pieces of tile and stuff like that. And again, the blue foam is perfect for that because the blue foam allows you to press all the detail. So all I do is just take a random tile and just draw a little crack in it, you know, and you can add extra cracks in there just to make it look like the tile was split over time or it was taking some damage. Make sure that it goes all the way from edge to edge. You can obviously just draw a little one in the middle, but tiles generally don't crack in half that way or halfway through. They generally crack along the length of the tile, don't they? So in that regard, we're going to try and keep to realism. Of course, you can actually then extend that crack into another tile, so it looks like that it has been the force of an impact that has cracked those both. So you can add that one across the two tiles, and that's perfectly okay as well. So just take another one randomly. Often I'll go from corner to corner, just follow a little bit of a random path. You know, it doesn't have to have lots of multiple cracks in there, and then just keep going over and over again until you've achieved the desired look that you want. Don't forget, at some point we're going to put walls on here as well, so you don't want to be overwhelming in the detail or worry too much, because the detail will come from the walls as well. So I'm just going to crack on, excuse the pun, quite literally crack on and just get these tiles all weathered in. Okay, I'll stop the video here. So just this is the sort of finished look I'm going to go for. As you can see, I've done sort of cracks all around. Some of these little sort of bits where the tile's missing, just dig in there with the pen and then just sort of break open the corners just to make it look a bit more sort of battle scarred. I've purposely left the big one in the middle intact. Obviously don't want to spoil that kind of work that you've done anyway. So that's the sort of generic tile. Done another one with nothing in the middle, and they'll just go together nice and simple like so, and then I will start to build a bigger picture. I'm going to do 4 generic tiles. I'm not going to show you all 4, probably because I'm only going to do one of these sort of pictured tiles in the middle. The rest will just be sort of generic. And the reason I'm leaving them fairly generic is because the walls are going to go on top in kind of modular fashion, and can be added and moved around. That's the idea anyway. I don't think I'm going to permanently fix the walls to the tiles. A, because it's easier to store the tiles, so it can be nice and flat, and storage is always a consideration when we're doing these things. And B, it means that I can move the walls around to make the dungeon different as well. So although the tiles themselves are going to be modular, and that's going to be mostly because of the sewer work in the middle, and with the generic ones floating around, the walls are really going to be the bit that makes it different every time we play the game. It also means that we can do a living dungeon, so that as the heroes move through each dungeon tile, we can then move the tiles around and move the walls around, so it looks like they're exploring a big labyrinth. So that's the idea. The next bit of the video will be to show you how I do the sewer bits. I'm going to do that when I put the MDF tiles underneath to give them the strength, and you'll see how that works. And then I'll show you how the walls are going to go together, and then I'll show you painted, hopefully. Right? So what I've done is I've just glued the 12x4 piece straight onto the board. I've made some indentation along the inner edge to represent stones and flagstones. I'm going to do the same on this bit of board here. This is going to be an end piece, so across there, and then a corner. So it's actually going to be a kind of bend in the sewer. So I'm just going to show you what I did with the flagstones. So I'm just drawing those across the edge there, so that it represents those flagstones. Doesn't need to use a ruler because it's only a little bit. And to be honest, once the sewer, the contents of the sewer starts going in, you're not going to see a great deal of these flagstones anyway, but I like to add those extra details just for sort of completion's sake. So we're going to do that across there. This piece is going to form the elbow, if you like, so I need to cut it, and then the last piece will go there. So I'm just going to do the cut now. We'll just move that to one side. Because they're all 12 by 4, it's relatively easy to kind of map out how it's going to go. You'll notice that I haven't drawn any cracks on these ones because I'm actually going to add the cracks after they're in place, so that once I've actually started to cut the pieces, you can kind of shape it to the board itself, so it just looks a bit neater and tidier without random cracks, or with random cracks. So back onto the board, should have an 8 by 4 piece, and that's going to go there, and a 4 by 4 piece will form the elbow. So hopefully you can see, I'm just going to move the camera a little bit, but that's the way it's going to form that sort of elbow on the board itself. I'm just going to move the camera so you can see that a bit better. So again, same process really, just a bit of PVA on the back. It does pay to be a bit neat on this bit because obviously I don't want to be doing too much sanding. I don't know what sanding this stuff will do to my lungs. I'll have to wear a mask probably. So yeah, the 8 by 4 piece just goes on the corner there. I will have to just sort of trim and sand that edge off a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay, and that just fits there nice and neatly. Just doing my best to try and get them close, and then the last 4 by 4 piece will go on the corner. What I forgot to do, as always, is just those little extra details. So I'm just going to make those flagstones all the way, because there's a slight breakage in that one. I'm going to make it a double line. You probably can't see that. So all I'm doing is just drawing extra bits of the flagstones in there, just to make the detail. I've already done it on that side, so that will just sit in the corner. Doesn't really matter too much if the PVA goes on the MDF, because I'm going to cover the MDF with some filler just to show the sewer. And of course, because I want it to flow around the board and do all sorts of stuff there, with the board we can do whatever shape we really want to do. So I've cut these bits out already, and I pre-cracked this one, but that's because I know I was going to keep it in one piece. And we're going to make a T-junction with this one, so it's nice and simple. Again, it's just taking the PVA, and I'm going to do this on camera, but you know, it is the same process. What I'm going to use is the weight of this MDF tile to keep the polystyrene flat on the other one. Sorry, the whatever this is, XPS. So yeah, there's the T-piece, and then I'm just spreading the glue as well, just over the MDF, because the MDF will drink up the glue, because it's very absorbent. I want to try and get the glue spread over as much of the MDF as I can. A good seal. Just wiping off the edges, doesn't matter if I just smudge it. But what is important is getting the foam right up to the edges of the board, so that I've got a good edge. It's going to save a lot of hassle later on. And if I knock it, just to push it back. Again, I've done the scoring on the sides as well to represent those flagstones, and they're just going to go on the edge there, so it's produced that kind of T-junction bit, and then I'll put that one on the other one, just to weigh it down, and I'm going to basically build a stack of them. Excuse me for being off camera for a moment, just making sure the stack is in the right place. And the last one is going to be another elbow, but this time I'm using up odds and sods of the foam, because I'm trying to use as much of the foam sheet as possible. So I'll just kind of, that's a 9x4. But the beauty of doing it in blocks of inch blocks is that I can make up the missing pieces quite easily. So just a 3x4 to go on the end. Just a 3x4 to go on the end. I've already put together some of these boards. I was having a quick test, which is most unlike me to test stuff. I normally just sort of do things off the cuff, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But they're all glued up and ready, and I'll show you those at the end of the video, so you've got an idea of how they look together. There we go. So there's the elbow. I've done a couple of straight sections too, and there'll probably be another straight section to come, just because they're always useful. I was going to do a big pool in the middle, but then you start to lose playing surface just for the sake of something that looks rather pretty. So this has got to be as useful as it is pretty, if you can. So I'm just going to pause the video there, and we'll come back to it in a second, and I'll show you the finished articles. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of 4 of the boards that I've done. So those are the sort of straight boards. You can see that they come apart and go together really quite neatly. I haven't actually sanded these boards yet, so the joins should be next to perfect. Those are the straight boards. They're just the ordinary boards, or 2 of them. I haven't got the Cthulhu one out because that's drying off at the moment. So you can just see that already that's a 2x2 board, which is good for Bushido, doing a sort of cult of Ure conflict against the prefecture. They come down and raid some of the death cults hideouts, or any other skirmish game will look good on that already. I'm going to add walls and all that sort of stuff, so it gives it some depth. This is the, you can see, sorry, I'm kind of flying across there, you can see the kind of depth. There will be some contouring of the sewer, and then some resin of some kind or a varnish over the top to create that wet look that I'm going to go for. Alright, so I'm going to leave the video there for now. What I'll do is I will finish off the elbow type ones, the corner ones, and the T-piece, and then the next video will be some of the modular walls that I'm producing and how I produce those, and the techniques that I use to make them look like brick walls, and then we'll look at painting and see how the board progresses from there. Thanks for watching. My name's been Andy, well, it has been Andy, it is Andy, from Tavares Water. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of 4 of the boards that I've done. So those are the sort of straight boards. You can see that they come apart and go together really quite neatly. I haven't actually sanded these boards yet, so the joins should be next to perfect. Those are the straight boards. They're just the ordinary boards, or 2 of them. I haven't got the Cthulhu one out because that's drying off at the moment. So you can just see that already that's a 2x2 board, which is good for Bushido, doing a sort of cult of Ure conflict against the prefecture. They come down and raid some of the death cults hideouts, or any other skirmish game will look good on that already. I'm going to add walls and all that sort of stuff, so it gives it some depth. This is the, you can see, sorry, I'm kind of flying across there, you can see the kind of depth. There will be some contouring of the sewer, and then some resin of some kind or a varnish over the top to create that wet look that I'm going to go for. Alright, so I'm going to leave the video there for now. What I'll do is I will finish off the elbow type ones, the corner ones, and the T-piece, and then the next video will be some of the modular walls that I'm producing and how I produce those, and the techniques that I use to make them look like brick walls, and then we'll look at painting and see how the board progresses from there. Thanks for watching. My name's been Andy. Well, it has been Andy. It is Andy from Tavares Board.